Yes, the crack of the bat, the slide for the steal, the heartbreak of a stolen home run. This is Major League Baseball, America's favorite pastime. But there's one major part dwindling towards extinction: the African-American player.
This pitch is hit well to center field. Going back is Delman Young. He looks up. This one is gone. A home run for Derek Jeter and the
Where
Yankees.
have all of baseball's African-American players gone? In a game of numbers, here are some worth taking a close look at. According to USA Today, in 1975, African Americans accounted for 27% of baseball's population. That number dropped to 17% by 1997, and today, 2007, 8.3%, or 72 African-American players on opening day rosters.
It's sad to know that that's what's happening because there's so many African-Americans that can play well. So, you know, you just never want to see a statistic like that.
To see that the numbers have declined to some degree greatly, it's definitely a surprise and a concern.
In the 40s, 50s, and even the 60s, the three major sports were horse racing, boxing, and baseball. Now, the three major sports are different. Baseball is still a major sport, but now you have football and basketball. Both football and basketball are predominantly African American. So you've had a migration of sorts of the African American athlete.
Facts not lost on the youth in our society.
It doesn't really surprise me because when a regular African American, you'll really associate him with basketball or football. Like for me, I started out with football. But then when I see my brother play and I see Frank Thomas, that's when I started really playing baseball. So like, it doesn't really matter about your skin color, it just really matters about what you like.
I get into arguments with my friends and, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, we got all these Dominican players, and like I only have a few players to name, so like, it's really tough for me, but like, it makes me want to try to be there and improve everybody. Like, just because you're black, you don't have to follow basketball or football or whatever. You can play baseball too and enjoy the sport while you're doing it.
You know, they talk about, you know, basketball and football, but I think you have to have the facilities. If you don't have the facilities, the equipment, if you don't have coaching and mentors that get the kids out there to play, how are you going to have people of color playing the game? I mean, it's not cheap, it's not overly expensive, but if you can help them and give them an opportunity to play, the talent is definitely there.
Another issue? The massive difference in the collegiate scholarship availability, especially football versus baseball, with football having 85 scholarships to offer as opposed to 11.7 for baseball, according to NCAA legislation.
Not only are these scholarships fewer in baseball than they are in football and basketball, but even those baseball programs, a lot of them don't go totally used. There are, many of the programs aren't funded to the full 11.7 scholarships. So it's a real problem we have to work with.
Now, the boys you saw in that piece were members of Harlem RBI, part of Major League Baseball's Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities. And in 2 weeks, the second installment of this series will address that very issue, what the league, some managers and players are doing to bring African Americans back to the diamond. 2 weeks ago, I told you of how the number of African Americans playing baseball has dropped dramatically from 27% to just over 8% the last 22 years. Well, tonight we take a look at what the different levels of Major League Baseball are doing to address this alarming stat.
Hitting one last night to win a game here in New York. The air lifts one to shallow right center. Cutting in is Millage, diving, and he made the catch!
In a game that celebrates its greatest historical accomplishment, the integration of the African American, it's shocking that so few are presently playing. But Jackie Robinson's breaking of the color barrier 60 years ago has not been lost. So as far as you being a manager, the first African American manager in New York for baseball, and then also the success you've had and are experiencing currently, how important is that for you both personally and professionally in trying to get this point across about the African American baseball player?
Well, I'm very proud of that. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that, you know, the opportunities there for me. I worked hard for it, but I think I'm an example as far as carrying a certain legacy to show people that, you know, we can achieve. These young kids can look at me and go, no, not only can I play the game, but I can be involved in management and lead my own ball club.
Baseball is more diverse than it's ever been. 40% of baseball players are minorities. And I think that model is what we're trying to achieve, total diversity. To say that the current numbers are what's the right number? What should be the right demographic mix? I don't know what that is. All I will say is that we must make sure that every African American kid that wants to play our game has access to it and we make it so that it's not too expensive.
Which brings us to availability. What's Major League Baseball doing to guard against the African American players disappearing?
Expand our RBI program, reviving baseball in inner cities. Currently that program is in over 200 cities worldwide, serving hundreds of thousands of kids on an annual basis.
The way that I got into RBI was they went to my school, and they had a flyer there, and then I will sign up for it.
This is probably like my 3rd year, so I just been here because it's like fun. You know, you get education and baseball combined, and I just been here because I just like baseball.
And individuals such as Mets manager Willie Randolph are doing their part as well. Through his foundation, Randolph has helped raise funds for the maintenance of inner city fields and provided money for equipment, not to mention saving the East Harlem Little League team from folding.
They excelled, you know, they achieved, and they almost came to a point where they almost went to the Little League World Series. So I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it, because when I saw these kids' faces back in April when they were kind of unsure whether they were going to play or not, and now to see them actually work their butts off to get to this point, I'm just very happy for them and their families. It's a great story.
Of course, Willie isn't alone in his efforts.
You know, me and my brother, we put on a golf tournament back at home. Last year was the first year, but, you know, we're going to do it every year from now on, and just to help the inner city kids and get them out there on the baseball field.
When I go back home in Houston, I try to get involved. Like I'm hands-on with the little leagues around there, so, you have to just try to catch them young pretty much.
And next week, we will conclude my series on the diminishing African Americans in baseball when we take a closer look at the booming Latino population and how grown-up influence plays a role in getting kids on the field. No one can argue that Major League Baseball is not a diverse profession. In fact, quite the opposite. Over 40% of the league is of non-white origin. But it's the African Americans numbers that have dropped tremendously. In tonight's conclusion to the diminishing African Americans in baseball, I take a closer look at the booming Latin population and the importance of adult participation.
And a shot hit to right field, deep, way back, and gone. A home run for Carlos Delgado. Hit sharply, center field. Andrew Jones going back, looking up, and it's gone. Home run for Beltran.
There's no question that the diversity of baseball as a whole is at an all-time high. That is something to celebrate. But the saturation of players comes from the Latin American countries, and that is by design.
All 30 of our teams have academies in the Dominican Republic. Another 10 have academies in Venezuela. When a club goes down there, that club can establish an academy, and they can develop ball players that are not subject to the draft. No doubt have always helped our numbers of Latinos that have now come into our game. That's why I think that same model, when set into urban America, works also for us and will increase our numbers of African Americans and Latinos from America that are going to be playing the game of baseball.
Of course, for the African American, participation will still come down to the desire to actually play baseball. Even Solomon admits that if the kids don't want to play, you can't force them. So what has drawn the few numbers that are in the game?
You know, my dad always pushed me to play baseball. You know, you grow up and you see a lot of African American kids these days, and they look towards football and basketball because I think that's what they see a lot of the times. But you don't see many in baseball, so my dad just pushed me towards baseball.
I was a big football guy, but you know, my dad led me to a sport where I can have longevity.
I had an uncle that he played in a minor league, so you know, it was introduced to me at a young age, so that's how I got involved in it.
Supporting a point that baseball is a generational sport that can only be enhanced by parent or adult influence.
Grown-up participation is very important. We always need coaches, we always need instructors, we always need parental guidance and figures like that, so they need to just participate.
How important is it for you to make sure that the African American does not disappear from this sport?
Very important, because it's a lot of young kids that can play, and you want to see the next you or the next Hank Aaron or whoever, because you know that guy's somewhere around, so you want to try real hard to make sure that kid has a chance to do the same thing.
Just for clarification, the academies that each baseball team has in Latin America are team funded. They are not at all sponsored by Major League Baseball. Its lone academy is in Compton, California, with plans to build others in Boston, Philadelphia, D.C., and Miami.